Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brighten Heights Vitality Series. This is episode 8, and we're going to be focusing on optimizing your health through the use of nutritional supplements. Thank you so much for joining, and today's webinar is sponsored by Brighten Heights. Brighten Heights is a first-of-a-kind senior living community that's going to be located in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. It promotes a life of healthy living and change among seniors, and we're expecting to welcome our first residents in 2024. For more information about Brighten Heights, please visit our website, which is brightenheights.org. Before I introduce Dr. Youngberg, I just wanted to ask that if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat box if you are participating via Zoom, or if you're joined via Facebook Live, you can put it in your comments, and we will attempt to answer those questions during the presentation today. Now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Youngberg. He has his primary focus is his daily practice at the Youngberg Lifestyle Medicine Clinic. He is an assistant clinical professor at Loma Linda University, both in the schools of medicine and public health, and is a fellow and founding director of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He has written 3 books, including Goodbye Diabetes, Hello Healthy, and Memory Makeover, and regularly speaks with and writes publications on these topics. So welcome, Dr. Youngberg. And now, last episode, if you'll recall, we discussed ways that we can better understand our health through lab testing. So the logical progression then is to go into, well, what can we do about those results, in addition to those foundational things we've been discussing in prior episodes. So he's going to be discussing how to effectively use supplements. Now, throughout Dr. Youngberg's discussion, he's going to be referencing a complimentary resource he's making available to you to download. And we will be sharing that in the chat box as well, that you can go to a link and request that resource. It's a chapter out of his Goodbye Diabetes book on the top supplements he recommends you consider looking at. And so with that, Dr. Youngberg, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about supplements.
Well, it's good being with you again today. And I'm excited to talk about this because, of course, I get tons of questions about this on a daily basis. And it's important to understand here that supplements are in addition to, not instead of, right? So when we're talking about supplements, sometimes it reminds me of an interview I saw with the actor Nick Nolte. And, you know, I thought he was a really good actor, but he has had a really hard life. And this interviewer he was an alcoholic. He was had a real problem with alcohol in particular. And he was looking for answers to his problem by just using all kinds of supplements. I mean, he must have had 100 different supplements in his home that he was using, and he was trying to keep up on the different benefits associated with the supplements. And this he was being interviewed for something like 60 Minutes or 2020, and he was actually kind of losing consciousness a couple of times during the interviews. He was talking about different supplements because he was so unhealthy. And and it's kind of like an interviewer was making fun of him, was asking all these questions, and obviously the viewers were seeing that here's somebody that was trying to take all these specialized supplements to address his health problems, but he wasn't addressing the number one health problem that he had, which was the fact that he was using alcohol definitely at excess, right? That was damaging his brain, and he was looking for the solutions in the wrong place. So it's important for us, as you know, this is our 8th seminar or webinar of this series. And we've been talking about a lot of things that we can do to optimize our health. We've been emphasizing on cognitive health. You know, what are the things that we can do to really improve how our brain works to limit our risk of going down that path of chronic cognitive decline, chronic physical decline. And in order to do that, we have to have, we need to do everything that is reasonable to improve our health. And it's important to note that that reasonable things include getting enough rest, right? There's no answer to optimizing your health if you're not taking the time to get enough rest. I mean, everything else is going to help. There's supplements that can help you get more rest. There's supplements that can help maybe neutralize some of the damage associated with inadequate rest. But ultimately, the body needs rest to be healthy, right? Appropriate types of rest and sleep. Same thing with the diet, with the whole foods, plant strong type diet, with exercise, and we've gone over those already. You can go back to our Brighten Heights website to see, and YouTube channel to see those past episodes and learn more about them. But supplements have a very definite impact on health and healing potential. We are now in the age of what we call personalization, where we no longer have to make medical decisions or clinical decisions for our patients based on studies that are just statistically driven. Well, the average person who takes this supplement or this medicine gets this benefit or that benefit. Well, who amongst us is the average person? None of us, right? None of us are the average person. And so we need more individualization of information and guidance to be able to reach our goals, health goals, whether they be physical health goals or emotional health goals or intellectual or mental health goals, etc. So what's really cool is that with the age of personalization, since 2003, the entire genome has been decoded for humans. Okay. In other words, we now every week studies are coming out to give us better understanding based on our unique genetic makeup, and I mean unique. Every one of us is unique genetically, just like a fingerprint is unique genetically, and so how we determine what is best for you and I in terms of all the fundamental health strategies, including nutritional supplements, is really a very individual question. And so, which means that we need to have the appropriate lab tests, and which we talked about last episode. How do you know what to do? How do you know what supplements are best for you? Well, in part, the answer is get the right lab test done, and that will give you the guidance. The genetics is a big part of it. So we're going to kind of take a deep dive into this, including a discussion. I'm going to share a screen now. Okay, including a discussion on some really interesting work that I was able to. I learned from Dr. Bruce Ames, who is a professor at the University of California at Berkeley. 1985. He was invited to come to Loma Linda University, where I was at the time a student, and I had the opportunity to sit in on a conference that he did. There was only about 15 of us there, and I got to pick his brain, and he was this amazing man. Some of you that may not be aware, Dr. Bruce Ames from Berkeley is a professor who is best known for what's called the Ames test. This is a test that is used to determine if a new chemical that has been discovered that does this or that is actually carcinogenic. And so they can put different levels of this chemical into Petri dishes with certain bacteria, and with this Ames test can determine how mutagenic, how many mutations are caused by this chemical that is they're trying to get into the marketplace, so to speak, to use in agriculture for and to use in cleaning your home or whatever it might be, to getting rid of weeds and so forth. So it was Dr. Bruce Ames who came up with this, and he also is the one that 30 years ago, and even this article was from 2003, and in the Journal of Nutrition as a supplement. We was talking about getting what's called the metabolic tune-up. Okay, getting metabolic harmony and disease prevention. In other words, what can we do to enhance our metabolism by understanding our genetic mutations? And that requires understanding what nutrients are involved in each of the enzymatic reactions in our body, which are determined, of course, by genes. Genes determine how the enzymes are built and whether those enzymes are dysfunctional or not. Because if it's a mutated gene that we carry, the protein or the enzyme that will generate or encode for will be dysfunctional, at least to some degree, anywhere from 5% to 90%. And that can have a huge impact on our health. But if we know we have that mutation, let me just take you here. This is a copy of my own genetic report. So for HIPAA security reasons, I can only show mine, right? Okay, so this is mine, and as you can see, and I'm going to just type in here. I'm just going to type in one of the most common mutations here is the MTHFR mutations. And you can see I actually have a single copy mutation of this MTHFR 1298 as shown here with a yellow highlight. That means I have one copy parent but not the other. That makes me a heterozygous mutant relative to this methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene slice or a polymorphism. So this is a single these genetic variants that I did with 23andMe. That's why I recommend every patient to just spend a little bit of money with 23andMe, and you can find out, a lot about your ancestry if you want. But the reason I use this is determine whether or not you carry the Alzheimer's gene, whether or not you carry the MTR, the folate, the gene that determines how well the vitamin B9 or folate works in your body, and so forth. I can check another thing is I can check for clotting related mutations. So here is information about clotting factors and the various genes and their mutations. And as you can see here, I have quite a few mutations in the clotting section. More importantly, this factor V Leiden, this has a lot to say about what nutrients, what dietary supplements might be good for me. Okay, I personally take additional vitamin C and several other nutrients, including nattokinase, because I have a heterozygous mutation to factor V Leiden. That means that I'm significantly more likely to get a blood clot than if I did not have this mutation. This is valuable information. So I know now I have been put on notice that I need to pay attention to my excessive blood clotting risk. And so I don't take unnecessary risks. I make sure that I stay active throughout the day. I make sure I don't sit more than an hour. Make sure I stay. So I take nattokinase, which is a natural clot busting supplement that the Japanese eat like candy. It's natto bean, right? So it's very safe. It's been used for thousands of years in the Asian and those of us that are at risk. So again, this the age of personalization. We're figuring out what are the things that are useful for you or for me. And this is something that, of course, I do with every patient. So we'll be going over a lot of this information. Let me just draw your attention to the handout that Susan mentioned is available to all of you that are watching this. And this is that comes from preventing initially. Okay, so it has all these different chapters on how do you know you got diabetes, how do you reverse it, and then there's a book on how you defeat diabetes. You might think, oh, wait a minute, I'm not diabetic. That's not going to be helpful to me. Let me explain. If you're over the age of 40, between the age of 40 and 59, there's at least a 50% chance, 1 out of 2 of us already has at least prediabetes. If you're between the ages of 60 and 74, at least 2 out of 3 of us, I'm in that group now, has at least prediabetes. And if you're 75 years of age or older, 3 out of 4 of you have at least prediabetes. In other words, if you're watching this and you don't have prediabetes, you're in a distinct minority group. Ultimately, where we want to be, we want to reverse whatever insulin resistance we have and get rid of that prediabetes or diabetes that so many of us have. Okay, but about 80, 90% of us are insulin resistant in the sense that we have to produce a lot more insulin in order to control blood sugar levels. And even then, we're not controlling them that well. And so everything, all these strategies listed here in section 4 of my book are the things that we've been talking about in this series. And as you see, chapter 20 is looking at 10 out of the many different supplements out there that may be really helpful in this, but I'm going to share with you, apply them to you on a more individual level. So okay, wow, that's great. Somehow that just disappeared. Let me actually find it again. Well, that's a first. I completely lost the entire preview document that had all my documents on it. It just disappeared just now for some odd reason. Never happened to me before. Okay, so okay, yes, I want to reopen. Thank you. let's see if we can open it up. While that is reopening. That's okay. Here we go. Okay, they're all here, but they're all in the individual. Okay, so let's here we go. So this is what we were looking at. This document. So this applies to all of us, is my point. And so let's actually take a look at some of the key information here. So again, 10 super supplements, if you will. But again, we want to individualize these for us each. Now, so here, let's just go over this 10. So here are 10 supplements that especially somebody with insulin resistance, which really, or especially somebody with high blood sugars, which is well over half of us watching this program. So like, for instance, a high potency multiple vitamin. I will show you the work of Dr. Bruce Ames, where he highlights the importance of this, is how you can literally undo the negative effect of mutations in your body by using an effective high potency multiple vitamin mineral supplement. It has such a huge impact on our health that it could actually dramatically decrease the rate of aging. I mean dramatically decrease your rate of aging. So there's things that we can do in this life of ours that increase aging, like drinking alcohol increases aging, right? Because it's a toxin. It damages the brain, and it puts an extra burden on the liver and the detoxification organs. Smoking, everybody knows now that smoking has a major impact on aging, especially the skin and so forth, because it impairs circulation to the skin and, of course, to other organ systems as well. Eating a fast food diet, eating an unhealthy diet, eating a diet that's low in fruits and vegetables, it's a major accelerant of the aging process in the body. And so what Dr. Bruce Ames shows in the metabolic tune-up is that just simply, if you only want one take-home message from today in terms of a supplement that can really benefit you, get on a healthy and a well-designed high-potency multivitamin mineral supplement. Okay, so now vitamin D we'll talk about a lot. Omega-3 fats, the EPA, DHA, we'll talk about that. Magnesium, we'll talk about. Lipoic acid as an antioxidant. Vitamin C is an antioxidant. Chromium and biotin, which are the mineral chromium and the vitamin biotin, really powerful at helping beginning to undo the negative influence of insulin resistance. Okay, so oftentimes the disease that our body is expressing is due to a deficiency of nutrients. Okay, and so then we have berberine as an herb that's been shown to be very effective for combating low-grade infections that commonly increase insulin resistance and therefore prediabetes and diabetes. And then one of the less known forms of vitamin E, tocotrienols, and why that's a powerful antioxidant that's fat soluble. It's a form of vitamin E that dramatically decreases oxidative stress. Okay, so let's go through these a little bit. Now, I just want to share with you some of the key findings here, and so that is, any change in our lifestyle. Okay, we need to, especially if you're diabetic. Okay, it's really critical that actually there's some supplements that I just mentioned. If you take them without checking your blood sugars, you could easily become over medicated. Why? Because anything that makes you healthier, that improves your blood sugars, is going to decrease your need for as much medication as you're taking. So that's why you got to be working with your healthcare providers, your prescribing doctors and nurse practitioners to make sure that you're not taking any more medication than is necessary, because once you start exercising and eating right and taking the right supplements, you're going to need less medication, or else you're going to end up with severe complications, with problems from really low blood sugars. You don't want to do that. Low blood sugars are far more deadly than than high blood sugars are. Okay, so let's jump ahead here and talk about some of these key nutrients that I mentioned. So let me actually pull up. Um, okay, let's see. I want to find. I could find all the other articles, but I'm not seeing the one I want. Here we go. Okay. So the you remember around just a couple of days before Christmas, 2016, many of us were somewhat stunned to hear the news that Carrie Fisher, best known for her role in Princess Leia on Star Wars, was flying back from London into LA and had a heart attack on December 23, 2 days before Christmas, and ended up dying in the hospital at UCLA a couple days after Christmas. Well, her mother, Debbie Reynolds, had already set the Christmas table for her while she was still flying in from London, and was so distraught from the death of her daughter that she herself died of a stroke the next day. So a couple world, a physician who had been the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the American Medical Association for, I believe, over 15 years, writing as the editor-at-large for Medscape, one of the most popular online medical journals for doctors and health professionals. And when I was shocked that how bold he was, I would have never gotten away with writing an article like this. But he was really passionate about magnesium. And basically, he even opened with the title saying, "Did Carrie Fisher die from chronic magnesium deficiency?" And then he goes on to say, well, we don't really know, but probably yes. Okay, and so he says that it's long been known that low magnesium levels can trigger a range of cardiac rhythm abnormalities, including some that are potentially lethal. Okay, and it's also been well known that magnesium infusions, like an IV with magnesium, are successful at quickly reversing many cardiac arrhythmias. So he goes on to elaborate, and I underline key things I wanted you to know about this relative to magnesium. Magnesium is probably one of the most important key supplements that people should be taking on a regular basis. The bottom line is that up to 80% of us in the United States, in North America, are frankly deficient in magnesium. That means 4 out of 5 of us have magnesium deficiencies, and that impacts all kinds of things. There was a study published well over 30 years ago out of Harvard that showed that teenagers who had a high cholesterol level would be found to have already the beginning of the fatty streaks of cholesterol buildup in their arteries. In fact, it looked like their arteries had a piece of string cheese that had been melted into the outer layer of the artery. That's what's called a fatty streak. And so teenagers with high cholesterol already have fatty streaks, this buildup of plaque inside the arteries, unless they had optimal magnesium levels. So in other words, you could have high cholesterol, but if your magnesium was optimal, in these studies out of Harvard, there was no fatty streak. Now, I'm not discounting the appropriate proportional value of addressing cholesterol as a risk factor. What I'm saying is, based on the data, is that magnesium deficiency is a far, far bigger risk factor than cholesterol ever will be. Much more important. And yet, when's the last time you heard that? Right? How many people listening to this program have been prescribed or recommended to use magnesium as a way to lower the risk of heart disease, compared to the number have been recommended to take a statin medication or a cholesterol lowering medication? Okay, so magnesium is really, really critical. Okay, so like for instance, Dr. Lundberg says low total body magnesium could be causative of sudden death many times. It's associated with an increased likelihood of coronary artery disease, sudden death. Serum magnesium levels are protected metabolically, and listen to this carefully, and only become low if the overall stores of magnesium are very low. Okay, so this is a key point. If you've had your magnesium blood test done and it's normal, that doesn't mean that you don't need magnesium. That just means that you're not seriously, seriously low in magnesium. Okay, when somebody has a low level of magnesium, where their magnesium level is within the lower third of the reference range, or even the lower half, that means that they likely have more significant decreases or deficiencies of magnesium. Okay, so we don't want to just look at the blood level, because the blood level is not sensitive enough to pick up all the people who have a real serious magnesium need. Magnesium is needed for over 300 biochemical reactions in the body. And this is where we get into the discussion of how genes operate. Okay, and I'm going to just show you something here. Let's see here. It was Cicero, the ancient Roman philosopher and scholar who lived at the time of Christ. He said old age must be resisted and its deficiencies supplied. And so from that statement, I've written a corollary to that, where dysfunctional genes must be first detected, then supported holistically with a W, that means very broadly, and finally nutrigenomically bypassed in order to supply their nutrient deficiencies. We'll see as we look at Dr. Bruce Ames' article a little bit more carefully in a little bit, that his whole point is that many genetic mutations create deficiencies that otherwise would not be caused deficiencies. So if we just measure a blood level of a nutrient, or even a body level, a tissue level of a nutrient, and it's at a level that is normally acceptable and adequate for the average person statistically, that doesn't mean that it's adequate for me. Because if I have a genetic mutation that creates a dysfunctional enzyme that uses that mineral, magnesium, as a cofactor, guess what? I'm going to need more of that cofactor to generate a better flow of that biochemical pathway based on that enzymatic reaction. So that enzyme can work better if it has more of the cofactors, if it's based on a genetic mutation in particular. Okay, so that's what we mean by nutrigenomically bypassing a mutation in order to supply the nutrient deficiency in particular. We're in the age of personalization. Folks, we need to take advantage of this to find out what our unique needs are, and then supplement those adequately so that we are now slowing down that excessive aging factor, or that toxicity factor that has not been neutralized because we don't have enough of the nutrients to neutralize the toxins, and therefore we have pathology developing in our body, whether it be cancer or heart disease or autoimmunity or whatever it might be. We have the potential to nutrigenomically bypass the ultimate effects of those mutations by paying attention to the biochemistry science and supplying those deficiencies. So there's all kinds of different genes that we could talk about, like the PON1, or what I call the pony gene. This pony gene is it's a gene that if there's a double copy mutation, like this signifies a plus plus, that's a homozygous mutation. That means that that enzyme that breaks down pesticides in this case is extremely dysfunctional. It doesn't work very well. It only breaks down a few of the pesticides, leaves the rest of them to build up in the body and cause all the damage that otherwise would have been prevented if that enzyme was working properly. So that's when we need more of the neutralizing nutrients to increase the functionality of that enzyme, but also nutrients to neutralize the damaging effect of the toxins that have built up, and other nutrients to help stimulate the detoxification, the removal, the purging of these toxins from their body. So you see why it's so critical for us to appreciate and understand the importance of being on the right supplements for the right reasons. Okay, now, going back to the Carrie Fisher magnesium story, so the Dr. Lundberg, this editor, past editor of the Journal of American Medical Association, he actually says he himself termed magnesium deficiency the emperor of all maladies. Okay, so if you had to take one message from this part of the presentation today, make sure you are magnesium repleted. Make sure that you're taking magnesium. That was Dr. Lundberg's entire point of this article, is basically saying almost everybody's magnesium deficient. I take magnesium supplements every day, twice a day. Every other doctor should as well, if they want to live a long and prosperous life. Okay, and every patient should be encouraged to do the same. There's maybe a few people out there that shouldn't be taking magnesium depending on their medical condition, but that would be the very rare case. The vast majority of us really need to do this properly. So the emperor of all maladies. Okay, this is huge. Remember that the more people die from heart disease than anything else in the United States. Okay, and just magnesium repletion could dramatically cut that back all by itself. So basically, there's a lot of drugs that increase magnesium excretion, like all those acid reflux drugs, proton pump inhibitors, like the omeprazole and etc., Nexium, etc. All these actually, in the well-documented medical literature, create magnesium deficiency and cause all kinds of other problems. Ethyl alcohols, cola drinks. So do you know people who use these? Do you know people who don't? Okay, in other words, almost everybody's on something that creates magnesium deficiency. Okay, so he does point out, and I totally agree, that we always start with whole foods. I always start with whole foods to get our sources of magnesium, and when we're using whole foods, we're getting sources of many other things as well, things that we don't even know about. So bottom line is you just eat more almonds, cashews. Okay, I don't recommend shrimp and crab primarily because of the toxins involved, but they are good sources of magnesium. the spinach, peanuts, pecans, whole grains, soy, black beans, edamame, dark chocolate. Do you know that one of the reasons that some of us have such a distinct craving for chocolate is that we're magnesium deficient? That's why we crave chocolate. We're magnesium deficient. Okay, brown rice, oatmeal, figs, apricots, bran, etc. Okay, nearly half of all Americans and 2/3 of teens and anybody over 80, okay, should are deficient. Okay, and really do not get anywhere near the recommended daily allowance of 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium. Okay, so.
Hey, Dr. Youngberg.
Yeah.
We just had a relevant question that just came in. It says, what is a good brand of magnesium and how much should we take?
All right. There's a lot of good brands. You just want to make sure you're getting a brand that is reputable. Okay, and there's literally hundreds of reputable brands. And
what about the form of magnesium? Because I know you've specified that.
Okay. So the forms of magnesium would be magnesium citrate. You start with that. Then if you want a better form than magnesium citrate that absorbs even better, it would be magnesium glycinate. And I oftentimes recommend magnesium glycinate or a chelated form of magnesium, but not magnesium oxide. Unless you're just wanting to use magnesium as a laxative to treat a tendency to constipation, I would avoid magnesium oxide. It's better than no magnesium. If that's all you can get, then use that. Okay, but it's better to use a form that absorbs better, that doesn't cause watery stools, right? So magnesium citrate, or better yet, magnesium glycinate would be the answer to that. And I would actually just start with 100, 125 milligrams at bedtime and work up. If anybody who's constipated, by the way, just gradually keep working up your magnesium at bedtime until in the morning you're not constipated anymore. And drink it with some warm water first thing in the morning to stimulate elimination. But you, as Dr. Lundberg points out in this article, the goal is to potentially get up to 400 milligrams a day, but not if you're getting loose stools from it. In other words, you go to what's called bowel tolerance with magnesium, and not beyond. You don't want to take so much magnesium that you're always running to the toilet. That's ridiculous. That's actually creating a magnesium deficiency if that happens. So fine tune it to you individually based on that. Okay, so he ends this article by saying, I do not understand why there seems to be no sense of urgency about better understanding about the cause of sudden, unobserved, unexpected death in Americans. His point is that a big factor is magnesium deficiency. Okay, there is a vast interest in cardiac resuscitation, right? Doing CPR on somebody with less than a 5% success rate, whereas you could have a dramatic success rate, well over 90% success rate, if you just got on the right nutrients. So he's saying, fix it. I'm doing it. You should do it too. I take magnesium every day. And last thing I do before going to bed is I take some magnesium. I take it in the morning as well. So, and that's a real important strategy that we should take advantage of. Now, let me actually go to some other documents that expand on this further. And
hey, Dr. Youngberg, could you just make a statement, because I don't know that we've done it in other webinars, maybe we have, just the impact of your whole lifestyle on your genes. You talked about before, at least I've heard you talk about turning good genes on and bad genes off. Can you describe that a little bit?
Okay, let's do that right here. Okay, this slide just for you. Okay, so the bottom line here is that our lifestyle, everything that we are exposed to that influences genetic expression, epigenetics, is called our exposome. Everything that we do, everything that we drink, everything that we eat, everything that we think, everything that we say is, and everything in our environment is part of our exposome. It changes the way our genes work for good or better. And so that's why we need to take stock and evaluate and assess that properly. So here we have all the different things as examples here show of what our exposome is and the potential for us to change the expression of our genes, turning the good genes on and the bad genes off, or vice versa, depending on our choices. So it all comes down to our choices. Our choices. For instance, another factor here is vitamin D. You know, we could spend hours talking about vitamin D. It's one of my favorite topics. But let me just say a couple things. Is that vitamin D deficiency, which is it's all over the North America. Almost everybody has some level of vitamin D deficiency, unless they're supplementing. Okay, even myself, when I worked on the island of Guam, which is near the equator in the Western Pacific. Okay, I thought I thought my vitamin D's got to be really optimal. I was low in my vitamin D, even though I spent time outside. So I had bought into this notion: if you just spend 15 minutes in the sun, 3 times a week, you got all the vitamin D you need. That's absolutely false. I know it's false. I've checked everybody's vitamin D levels for the last 20 years, every single patient. And almost everybody in California, where I always have worked, and Guam, mid-Pacific, have been low. Almost everybody is low in vitamin D. Okay, and you got to optimize that to have an optimal immune system, anti-cancer system, an optimal cardiovascular health, to decrease autoimmune risk, on and on and on. So, and for neurologic purposes, to keep your brain sharp, to limit your risk of developing Alzheimer's. Even a mild vitamin D deficiency was shown to cause a 51 increased risk of developing dementia, Alzheimer's, the main form of dementia. Okay, if your levels were very low, if your levels were really low, that's 125% increased risk of Alzheimer's or dementia. Okay, so we've known this a long time. This was in the Neurology Journal in 2014. And yet I still see editorials in medical journals and newsletters saying, "Oh, we don't need to worry about vitamin D." It's like I don't know what's happened to our system. It's just like how do you know who you can trust nowadays? You got to look at what the evidence says, and you need to step back and look at it broadly and come up with decisions that are based on solid evidence. Okay, so in other words, if your vitamin D is less than 50 nanograms per ml, actually per ml, okay, you're going to be at a greater risk. We know that amongst the over 100,000 people that had been tested for COVID and had their vitamin D levels based on an NIH data bank, we discovered that the risk of even getting infected with COVID went double if your vitamin D level was less than 55. And almost everybody's under 55 unless they're supplementing. In fact, almost everybody's under 30 unless they're supplementing. Okay, so anyway.
Hey, Dr. Youngberg?
Is critical. Yes.
We have 3 questions actually from one participant. So I'm going to read them all 3 and then you can respond. The first one was, will the body slough off excess vitamin C or vitamin D? That was the first one. Would you suggest a high potency multivitamin? I guess she's wanting a recommendation. I realize that's a little dicey for you, but you can handle that. And the third one was, what's a good source of alpha lipoic acid and biotin?
Okay. All right. So the bottom line, so let's start with the last question, the best source of alpha lipoic acid and biotin. Well, first of all, we always go back to whole foods, right? So whole foods, lots of green leafy vegetables, lots of colors. It's the colors themselves and non-starchy vegetables in particular that demonstrate their gene altering ability. These actual colors are chemicals that have gene altering ability for good. Okay, and so we want to take advantage of that first and foremost. Okay, beyond that, depending on your situation, if you have diabetes or if you have issues with skin, hair, and nails, biotin is a great thing to take because it lowers insulin resistance and it's just good for connective tissue. So you can supplement that, take it as a supplement. The alpha lipoic acid, if somebody has any tendency to neuropathy or nerve damage, or they need an additional antioxidant in their program, the lipoic acid is great for the liver, is great for nerves. It protects and actually helps heal neuropathy in many cases, and that would be a supplement of. And there's more information on the handout, by the way. We're not going to get through all this, but the handout has a lot of information on it. I just went over a couple of the key highlights. And it'd be about 300 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid once or twice a day, depending on the situation. So in terms of a high potency multiple vitamin that I recommend, well, like I said, there's many good brands out there. And if you want to see what I recommend to my patients, you can look it up on our website. We have a website that talks about all these things. I actually developed a high potency multiple with other things to help improve dealing with our tendency towards mutations and detoxification problems. It's called Young Life Complete. It's a good broad-based multiple. That's good for a lot of reasons, not just being a multiple vitamin mineral supplement. But that's something that you would normally work with your direct healthcare workers to get some guidance in your area of what would be best for you.
And then the other one she asked about, does the body slough off excess vitamin C or vitamin D?
Okay, so first of all, on vitamin C, like the B vitamins, those are water soluble, meaning that the body will, I recommend lots of vitamin C. Okay, so the bottom line here is that the bottom line is that we should be I recommend my patients at least 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day, and then work up from there. There's a lot of vitamin C is so good for so many reasons, as neutralizing toxins, a powerful antioxidant, protects the arteries, it limits the risk of heart disease, good for your immune system, and so forth. But excess vitamin C is just flushed off. But one of the things that people say about vitamins is the only real impact of supplements is that you end up with expensive urine, right? And I've heard that so many times. It's kind of like saying, stop breathing so much. You're just breathing it right out again. I mean, stop eating food. You know where your food ends up, right? I mean, those are, to say that supplements end up in expensive urine is basically not understanding body physiology very well. Okay, and so even I've heard statements that 90% of the supplements you take ends up in your urine. Well, guess what? The same is true for any medicine you're taking. Does that negate the value of the medicine? No. The body has to process it and then eliminates what has the metabolite that has been processed. That's the way the body works. That's what you want the body to do. So don't let somebody don't get away with using statements like that. And again, remember, there's a right level for everybody. The key is figuring out what that right level is. Well, you want to use rational, justifiable strategies, and that requires a knowledge of the nutritional medicine literature and how to apply that properly. Okay, so okay, here's another reason vitamin D deficiency is such a big deal. Yeah, and this is a June 11 just came out recently, 2021, that basically if you're low in vitamin D, you have increased opioid or opioid seeking and drug seeking behavior, including you want to spend more time outside. Guess why? Because spending time outside stimulates the endorphins in your body, which basically impact the opioid receptors in your brain. Okay, and so if you have a tendency or a family history of opioid addiction, of addiction to painkillers, get your vitamin D optimized. That's what this study showed, that vitamin D, when it's optimized, dramatically lessens a tendency to go back to painkillers or opioids. You know, we have an epidemic of heroin and Percocet abuse and all kinds of drug abuse that could be dramatically altered if we started taking preventive strategies like either spending time outside often, right? Okay, get some sunshine on your body, but optimize your vitamin D anyways, because just getting out into the sun isn't enough to optimize your vitamin D. So there's a lot of good information in this article that we don't have time to go over right now.
Hey, Dr. Youngberg, another question came in on that question about vitamin D, if it's stored in the fat cells, or what happens if you were to take more than your body wanted or needed, what happens to it?
Okay, well here's the bottom line. Okay, and I'm when I talk about vitamin D, I'm speaking as an expert. Okay, unfortunately, I hear a lot of doctors talking about vitamin D, and they're not speaking as experts. How do I know that? Because I am an expert in this field, and I've read all the literature on it. And when they talk about, yeah, you're taking way too much vitamin D, oh, this is really bad, you can cause this problem, that, they are basically clearly not aware of the literature on this properly. They're making assumptions that are based on something they learned in medical school that really isn't applicable in this situation. Okay, so bottom line is this. There was a doctor years ago that was taking a multiple vitamin supplement that had been developed inaccurately. That's why you want to use only reputable sources of nutrients. You know, it's the top brands around the nation. Okay, preferably brands that are clinical grade. Okay, so this doctor was just using this, and it had vitamin D in it, but the manufacturer of this product, instead of putting in 2,000 units of vitamin D per day, was giving 1,200,000 units a day.
That's awful.
So I'm telling you this for a reason, to keep you focused on not making mountains out of a molehill. Okay, and that is, it's almost impossible to get too much vitamin D. There's very little research suggesting toxicity of vitamin D unless you're taking crazy high amounts. Okay, you're more likely to die from water intoxication than vitamin D intoxication, and I'm not exaggerating. That's a statistical fact. And so this doctor was taking 1,200,000 units of vitamin D a day for over a year. Was all lethargic and didn't feel good. Went to the ER, and the ER doctor couldn't figure it out. And finally, after doing hundreds of tests, did a vitamin D. You know, put the symptoms into a supercomputer at the ER, and it came out with, here are all the things you can check. And vitamin D was way low on the list. Guess what his vitamin D blood level was? 700.
Wow.
And that's toxic. That's toxic, but that's only because he was taking a huge amount. So if you're taking, you know, anywhere from 2 to 10,000 units of vitamin D a day, you're not going to be toxic, ever. Okay, based on the medical literature. And you know what happened to that doctor that had way too much? He recovered fully. Why? He just stopped taking the overdose. Right? That's what you do. In other words, make good decisions every day, and you won't have to worry about that. Okay, so by the way, the other thing about vitamin D is, as this article points out, that if you're low on magnesium, that will make the vitamin D ineffective in your body. If you're low on vitamin K2, the MK7 form, if you have an optimal level of one vitamin in a low level of another vitamin, it's going to create an imbalance, right? That's why we have to be broad-based in our strategies. And when you optimize vitamin K, you optimize magnesium, you optimize vitamin A, that completely undoes any potential problem with calcification or hypercalcemia that vitamin D could cause, theoretically, even though it would be extremely rare. So the goal is balance. It's all about balancing this properly. So we've gone through. Let me just finish with one other item, okay? That I wanted to show you here. Let's see here. Well, let me just tell you. Okay, let me just tell you. Here's where we're wrapping up. Two kind of take-home points. One is, if you are concerned about dementia or lessening cognitive function, probably the single most important, I'll give you the top two things that I would recommend for somebody to consider. And that is, number one, it's called CDP choline. Capital C, capital D, capital P, choline, also known as acetylcholine. And I take it myself because I want to optimize my cognitive function. And I take 250 milligrams. I take 2 of those twice a day. Or if you don't need a lot of it, you can do 1 twice a day or even 1 once a day. But if somebody wants to really address a tendency towards cognitive decline, or a family history, or a genetic problem that's associated with cognitive decline, then optimize CDP choline. Why? Because 90% of Americans are frankly deficient in CDP, in choline, the phosphatidylcholine. Okay, so that's one. The second one is the omega-3s. The best form, in my opinion, would be the microalgae based, because it's sustainable, microalgae based forms of the omega-3 EPA DHA, where you want to get at least 1,000 milligrams of DHA. That's a blood test I do in every patient. Okay, and if their DHA is less than 4%, that means they got to really build it up. The last patient I saw this morning had a very healthy person, a health professional. We checked it, and this person was really low on DHA. It should be 4 times higher. It was around 1. It needs to be above 4. And so she now has not just a philosophical understanding of the value of DHA and lowering inflammation, being good for the brain and good for the heart and good for the immune system in general, but it's also the fact that I measured my level in my own body and it's low, so now I can get it up. So we're fixing things within our body. So that is a kind of a quick review of some of the biggest topics in my mind that we need to be considering collectively. Everybody should be paying attention to these key nutrients. And we could have a whole week long of seminars just on supplements and still not get through. But at least we're in this program, we're recognizing that when you're trying to optimize your health, okay, appropriate supplementation is one of the key strategies that we should appropriately pay attention to optimize it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Youngberg. As you said, we could spend a whole lot more time on this topic. What I'd like to talk to you about before we wrap up here is just that we are going to have another Vitality Series episode on July 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, where Dr. Youngberg is going to talk about following your plan and not your feelings. And he'll even share a little bit of his testimony, which is a very powerful thing. And it kind of gives you the background on why he got into this field in the first place. So that's exciting to hear. Katie will be sharing a link related to the next webinar, and you can certainly go to our website to sign up for that as well. And just as a reminder, Brighten Heights will be a senior living community where seniors will be empowered to live a life of health and wellness with purpose. Thank you again for joining, and we will see you next month. Take care.
Bye now.